In the shadow-drenched city of Nocturn, an old saying whispered through the alleys and scribbled in the margins of forgotten books. A man may trade with his shadow, but the shadow always takes its due. No one knew when the tradition began, but it was accepted as truth. Shadows here were not mere absences of light. They were alive, waiting. At midnight, beneath a moonless sky, one could strike a bargain, a gift for a wish, a talent for a price. But what happened after the deal? That was never clear. And no one ever got something for free. Vincent Delaine was about to learn this the hard way. Vincent was a struggling musician, his hands quick but never perfect, his compositions heartfelt but never genius. In Nocturne, where talent was currency, being good was the same as being invisible. And Vincent was tired of being forgotten. At his lowest, rent overdue, pockets empty, violin battered from years of desperate use, he remembered the old legend, the shadow's bargain. With nothing left to lose, Vincent stood beneath the towering spires of Nocturne's oldest district, where gaslights flickered weakly and alleyways stretched into endless blackness. He whispered the ancient words. A shadow follows, a shadow knows, a shadow waits where moonlight goes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his shadow moved, not with him but on its own. And then it spoke. What would you trade, Vincent Delaine? Asterisk. The voice was low, silken, curling around his name like a slow-burning fire. Vincent swallowed hard. I want to play like no one else has ever played before. A soft chuckle echoed from the darkness. Asterisk. And what will you give in return? Vincent exhaled shakily. Take whatever you want. His shadow smiled, and the deal was done. The next morning, Vincent woke to something impossible. His hands, once clumsy and imperfect, moved with inhuman precision. His fingers glided over his violin strings as if they had always belonged there. And when he played, the music was flawless. Not just beautiful, not just masterful, impossible. Within days, his name spread through Nocturne like wildfire. Invitations flooded in. Patrons begged for his performances. He played in grand halls, noble courts, and in front of audiences who had never cared for him before but now couldn't live without him. Vincent had never known such power. But then he began to notice it. His shadow was no longer following him. It was watching. At first it was subtle. A flicker in the corner of his eye. A shape that didn't quite match his movement. Then one evening as he played in a candlelit chamber, he saw something that froze him mid-note. His shadow stood behind him, not stretched along the floor, not bound to his feet. It stood separate, watching, and smiling. From that night on, Vincent couldn't ignore it. His shadow moved when he wasn't looking. He'd turn a corner and catch it lingering behind a second too slow. He'd lift a glass to his lips, and his shadow's hand would remain motionless. One night, he awoke to find it standing at the foot of his bed, staring. "Stop this," he hissed. His shadow only whispered, "I am only taking what is mine." And it was right. Vincent had never asked what his shadow had taken in return for his talent. Now he was beginning to understand. It started with small things. He forgot faces, the names of people he had once known. Then he stopped dreaming. His mind became empty. His emotions numb. He played but no longer felt joy. He ate but no longer tasted flavor. His shadow had not taken his body. It had taken his humanity, piece by piece. And soon he would be nothing but a shadow himself. Desperate, Vincent returned to the alley where he had made the deal. The darkness welcomed him. His shadow, now fully independent, stood waiting. "You cheated me," Vincent hissed. His shadow laughed. "I gave you what you wanted, and now I take what is mine." Vincent's hands trembled, his perfect hands, the hands that had played for kings, that had held the world in their music. He looked at them, then at his shadow, and made his final choice. "If you want what's left of me," his voice was hoarse, "then take it. But give me something in return." His shadow tilted its head. "And what is that?" Vincent swallowed. "My soul for my music." The shadow smiled. "Done." And with that, Vincent Delaine ceased to be. The next morning, the people of Nocturne awoke to silence. Vincent Delaine, the greatest musician the city had ever known, was gone. His violin lay untouched on his chair. His footsteps had vanished. And yet, every night when the moon was at its peak, a melody would drift through the streets, haunting, perfect. A song played by no one, and by the shadow that had once been a man. This story explores the cost of perfection and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Vincent's desire for greatness leads him to make a deal with his shadow, but he fails to consider the price. The shadow, a metaphor for the darker aspects of his own soul, ultimately consumes him. The tale serves as a cautionary reminder. True artistry and fulfillment come not from shortcuts or bargains, but from embracing one's humanity, flaws and all. Subscribe for more thrilling tales.